not long ago, Quebec announced that it was going to ban the sale of internal combustion engine vehicles by 2035. Now, this isn't new. I mean, California's done it. London has done it. There's many other jurisdictions have done this. This is the first one in Canada. And to talk about that, we're going to speak with Joanna from Clean Energy Canada. So welcome to the interview, Joanna.
Hi, Markham. Great to be here.
Now, what's your take on Quebec's decision?
I think that Quebec and BC have both been leaders when it comes to electric vehicles in Canada. And a colleague kind of put it, they're in sort of a race to show who's the more ambitious province on EVs. And Quebec has just, again, pulled ahead by putting in place this 2035 ban on the sale of internal combustion engine cars. But in terms of the global landscape, you know, Quebec is fitting in nicely among a growing group of countries, states, and cities that are moving in this direction. And so a couple weeks ago, we saw California announce the same timeline, the ban on the sale of gas cars by 2035. A day, I believe, after Quebec's announcement, we saw the UK pull up its timeline for when it would ban the sale of internal combustion engine cars. So it used to be 2040, then it was 2035. Now it's been moved up again to 2030. And over 12 other countries, mostly in Europe, have made this same decision. So they're fitting into the trend, although certainly Quebec is a leader in Canada.
Now, if this trend to make this kind of an announcement started 2-3 years ago, and at first it was 2040, and then as you mentioned, you know, the date's getting closer and closer. The reason for that, in my opinion, is the faster than expected acceleration in battery technology and the drop in electric vehicle prices. My experts did not expect that. The kind of things that we're seeing today, they expected in the late 2020s, maybe 2030. And so the rapid change in technology, from my point of view, has allowed policymakers to be more aggressive than they might otherwise have been. What's your take on that? Would you agree with my analysis?
Yes, and so I can think of three major drivers of this. Certainly, the technology readiness is a huge one, and the associated cost drops in electric vehicles and their parts. So, in the last 10 years, the cost of electric vehicle batteries has come down by 80%. That is the bulk, maybe 40 or 50% of what makes an electric vehicle expensive. And we're expecting to see continued drops in the price of these batteries, as well as continued increases of their ranges. And so, you know, as those two trends continue, cost of EVs are going to continue to come down and the range will go up, which helps to address the range anxiety. The other two drivers is that number two is the vehicle offerings are becoming, you know, there's a broader range of makes and models, and not just within the sedan vehicle segment. We're now seeing electric versions of SUVs and pickup trucks that are coming online mostly in the next 2 years. That's huge because there's a lot of people who they need to drive an SUV or a pickup truck, or they really want to, and so they need they need electric options. The last driver is climate policy, and you know we know we need to do more to drive down our emissions. And in Canada and in the US and various parts around the world, transportation emissions are one of the largest sources. Electric vehicles are one of the best solutions we have. And so I think governments are really doubling down on those.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that. And what surprises me is what's gone before. But equally, what I think we're going to see during the 2020s. Regular readers and viewers will know that my motto these days is buckle up, folks. The 2020 is going to be a wild ride. The coming decade is going to be hugely disruptive, and I would not be surprised if we see governments, especially ones like BC and Quebec, that even advance it further than 2030. You might see 2027, 2028. And driven partly by climate policy and so on. Do you think that might happen, or are we kind of in the the date range where it's not going to move much now?
I think we'll play a bit of a wait and see approach. So when we hear this, or when we see these headlines, ban of gas powered cars, certainly there are people out there whose backs get up a little bit, and we can't imagine a world without gas cars. And so I think, and certainly we're hearing those arguments from automakers. So I think what BC and Quebec will do, they both have similar policies in place. I think they'll wait a few years, see how easily automakers are meeting that first milestone, the 2025 target, and then if the automakers are meeting it easily and selling many more EVs than they need to, then I think there'll be a bit of a regroup to see if we can up the ante and increase ambition on the timeline there.
There's two other shoes that have to drop, which would make this a three-footed creature, which would be rather odd. Nevertheless, one is what California has already done, which is banning diesel and gasoline medium and heavy duty commercial vehicles by 2045. And of course, they're responsible for so much oil consumption, gasoline, fuel consumption and emissions that I can see governments doing that and moving that date up. And the second thing is the existing fleet. I wouldn't be surprised at all if we see incentives from governments to take some of the older existing fleet out of service, maybe before their economic life is done.
Yeah, so on the medium and heavy duty side, I think you're right. And California has made that move. And I know about 15 other US states have signed an MOU with California to, in a softer way, committing to that similar trajectory. We're waiting to see what the federal government in Canada is thinking on medium and heavy duty vehicles. It's an area ripe for action, and I actually think it would be much less politically polarizing than the passenger car discussion, in part because we have some of the leading manufacturers of zero emission vehicles. And so our businesses here in Canada stand to benefit if there's growing demand for those electric buses and trucks. The second piece that you asked about was, can you remind me?
Existing fleet.
Existing fleet, yes. So the average lifespan of a car is about 13 years in Canada, and you're 100% right. We're focusing a lot on ensuring the sale of new cars are electric, but then what does that mean for those 13 years of driving these other vehicles are doing? In that regard, a scrappage type program would be required if we want to get to an 100% electric existing fleet. That said, there are some emission trade-offs with getting vehicles off the road before the end of their useful life, because you're sort of wasting the emissions associated with their manufacture. And so I think it gets a little more complicated as to really what the emission benefits are for scrappage type programs. But certainly if the federal government's going to move forward with one, we need to make sure we're only incentivizing the purchase of EVs and not newer internal combustion engine vehicles.
Well, I think to wrap this up, it's fair to say that there are all sorts of, the devil's in the details, and we'll see what the kind of calculations both industry and consumers and governments make going forward. But the arc of the trajectory is very clear now, that we're moving towards electrification of the transportation and much quicker than we were before. And I think that has all sorts of implications for the energy landscape in Canada. So Joanna, thank you very much for this. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Markham.